Hey, what's up, Hog Pods? Thanks for joining us this evening. We got a really cool interview here. So I'm here with Lindsay, and that's Lindsay and Ariel from Sterling Exotics in North Carolina. If you've ever heard of their company, they do hognose and tree frogs and some other cool stuff. So Lindsay is with us, and Ariel may hop on here in a little bit. But Lindsay, if you want to go ahead, and question number one is kind of your name and your logo. How did you guys arrive on the name, and what is the logo, and how does it all fit together for you?
Great topic, because logos are hard. It's so hard to kind of wrap up your vision, even, and to try to communicate that to an artist that's going to bring it to life for you. So it definitely took a lot of thinking. But what didn't take a lot of thinking for us was the name. So pretty quickly, we came up with Sterling Exotics. Sterling was actually a name of Ariel's that she used for gaming for a very long time, of all things. But it also just kind of captured how we felt about our business. It'll soon be a family name for us. So it had a lot of things, but for the most part, it meant a new beginning. So Ariel was very involved with this particular game for many, many years. That was her, actually her username, I guess you call it, on the game. And she finally needed to put it to rest. It was very taxing on her. It involved a lot. She led groups and things on it. And it just became a lot. And we had this conversation one day where I just kind of said, I know this isn't making you happy anymore. It's become work for you. What can we do differently? So we just kind of sat back and looked at our lives and decided, kind of went off Sterling Moon. If you want to take it the other direction, Sterling Silver, our silver lining, our new life. What was going to be our new life? And kind of our family name. And that's kind of how we came up with that. It just evolved very naturally. Sterling, you're leaving the game that she was so invested in and loved so much, and we're starting a new life doing something we can do more hands-on, more involved, have more connections with real people instead of, an online game. And that's really where it grew, honestly. That's what the actual name came from. The logo, totally different. That is where you have to pull it all together and go, okay, what do we want the face of our business to look like? We knew kind of right off the bat, we wanted a feminine touch, because obviously we're both females, but we didn't want to go so feminine that it was, off-putting or anything. So we just wanted something bright, bold, strong, and have that little bit of feminine touch. So that is also kind of where we came up with the crystal idea. If you look at our logo, you'll see the big natural kind of crystal formation. So not a blingy diamond type look, but a natural crystal formation. And we had to toss a bunch of ideas back and forth. Did we want a snake on there? Did we want a frog on there? And ultimately we came up with, no, we just want our name, because what if? What if in the future we don't work with frogs anymore? Or what if our species of snake changes, or, anything that might come up? We wanted it to also be versatile in that way. So we didn't want the actual logo picture to be something that had something very significant on it in case, something happened. We do also do plants as well. We do aeroids and some more rare, hard to find tropical plants. So, we wanted to make sure it was kind of open for that too. So that's kind of how we came up with the look, because we didn't want to be super specific with, kind of, you also have to look at everybody else's logos too and kind of get an idea, what do other people do. A lot of people do, hognose snakes in their hognose logo. It makes total sense, but we just knew kind of from the start that we were going to be more than probably just hognoses. We love so many types of animals that there was just no way for us to narrow it down. So then it all started with trying to get that picture into the artist's mind, and that can be a whole nother podcast, Kevin, because trying to find somebody that can do a logo for you that's good, isn't going to scam you, can really bring it to life, make it pop. That was very challenging. We probably went through 3 or 4 people, trying to find the right person. And then a lot of that, they'll give you some drawings, and you kind of have to base your logo off of that, or which direction do we want to go with that? Which elements do we not like about that? So yeah, it definitely, that was one of the hardest parts, definitely, in coming up with everything. But I also think it's the most important part. I think if you're going to be breeding something, you need to have a face to your name, some sort of professional logo or name, and be able to start somewhere, because people's got to be able to, see who you are and remember you. And that's the one thing I really love about our logo. No matter where we go, you won't forget that logo. It's bold, it's bright colors, with the brighter teals and blues and purples in there. And we have a lot of people, we get a lot of compliments on it, on our table setup and everything it shows. So that's been really nice to see that people like it as well. So that was a big thing too. We did want it to be bold, but not gaudy, not over the top, not too crazy. So we've been really happy with it. I don't foresee us changing much about our logo, and certainly not the name. The name is there. That has stuck. So yeah, it's been a little bit of a wild ride with the logo, but we did get lucky and found, a wonderful person to do our final design, bring it all to life, and are very thankful for that.
Well, very cool. And you've kind of mentioned, and I like the logo, by the way. It's really, I don't know, it's just a nice kind of a seal. You could almost make like a colored coin out of it, yes. Something like that, a token to give away to people. But branching into question 2, and you kind of have touched on it with at least 2 of the species I know you work with. What other species do you work with currently, or are there any that have stood out in the past you've worked with that you have enjoyed?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we started, I, of course, had ball pythons, and I wanted another ball python. Of course I did. They're snuggly. They're great. Yeah. And it was what I knew and what I was used to. Ariel immediately wanted a hognose. She had her eye on the ball from the get-go. She wanted a Western hognose. She loved them. And so we ended up each getting our own. I got my ball python. She got, well, they were both ours, but, she got her hognose out of the deal. Cool. And that's kind of where it all kicked off for us. However, that, of course, spills into a whole different pond. So from there, we actually really got into the Madagascar blonde hognoses. We had 3 pairs, and we had big dreams and really wanted to work with the species. We kept them for a long time, love them to bits, of course. They're an amazing species, but I do think there's some trial and error there. You kind of have to figure out what you like and what you don't. So I'm kind of glad that we, started with a couple different species. And we, not to say that we built a collection or anything, right from the get-go. We started with pets, of course. And kind of from there, keeping them, learning how to keep them correctly, keep them happy, is how we really narrowed into, or should I say opened up into, what all we wanted to work with. So for snakes right now, we are just Western hognoses. Cool. We have worked with milk snakes, like I said, the blonde Madagascar hognoses. We've worked a little bit with ball pythons. Didn't get too much into ball pythons. I love that. I think they're great, but we just we knew that wasn't the direction we wanted to go. So yeah, for snakes right now, it is exclusively Western hognoses. Cool. I'm sure we have some aspirations that might come to life one day with some of the subspecies or locales. But for now, it is Western hognoses. For snakes, we have a lot of other stuff going on too, though, which for us has been really important. If it weren't for some of the other species that we work with, our accomplishments up to now wouldn't quite be what they are. So one of probably the first things we started keeping once we got really serious into Western hognoses was the White's tree frogs. We fell in love with them. We saw them at a show. I think I joined some Facebook groups. Absolutely fell in love. We got very lucky for when we got into the White's tree frogs. We were able to grab some really nice frogs from some of the best breeders in the U.S. and hone in on that. And we've only expanded with them since then. We've actually imported some captive bred super snowflake White's tree frogs from Germany. We imported those 2 years ago. We had our first spawn from one of those. It was a male that sired the spawn. The female was a self-produced blue phase. And so we've had our first spawn with that project happen. So that's been really cool to see come to fruition. So definitely the hognoses and the White's tree frogs, I would say, are our main species, but we do work with a lot of other stuff too. I think like a lot of people, you tend to, or most people at least I've seen, tend to start with feeders. So we actually really fell in love with roaches. We started dubia colonies pretty early on, and from there got into giant peppered roaches, the ornate species, cave roaches. I really like the big ones. So I like the giant peppereds, the cave roaches, ivory heads, death heads, some of these really cool roach species. And while they may not be a huge hit at shows, they are very niche. It's still really cool. And in fact, we've done some fun stuff where we had a little sticker design made. And if I could get somebody out of the crowd at a show to come pet or hold one of the giant pepper roaches, they got a free sticker.
Oh, cool.
So we try to help people get over some fears. But I also love crested geckos. I have a small breeding collection of cresteds. I don't want to go overboard with them, but I do have a select few pairs of them that are higher end, and love cresties. We do mourning geckos, specifically the type B and type Ds. More frogs, Pac-Man frogs, red eyes. As far as breeding goes, what we have bred with the frogs has been the White's tree frogs and the Pac-Man frogs. We've actually had a successful breeding of Pac-Man frogs. They are a little bit tricky in captivity, but we are now keeping red eyes, hoping to have red eye babies, lots of them this year because we have a nice collection of red eyes now. Yeah, so going back to the feeders, we actually started breeding our own mice pretty early on, and that's been a really cool adventure. We got a hairless colony going, or a couple of them, and then through that have also gotten into, some neat genetics with the mice. Of course, they are our feeders as well, but we do have pet quality mice too. So that's been really fun to bring to shows as pet quality mice. We have the Abyssinians and all the different mice genetics. Gosh, that's a whole different ball game with the mice genetics. They're a bit tricky, but yeah, that's about all I can think of at the moment. I'm sure there's more, but yeah, the mice have been definitely a game changer breeding our own mice and also being able to offer some to the community.
Yeah, that's so cool. And like we had talked about it before, that I'm raising my own mice, obviously for feeders, but the stuff that I got was, pet shop quality stuff, and just amazing what the bloodlines. I brought in 2 different bloodlines, so I wasn't doing too much genetic bottleneck, with the population. And I've seen a few anomalies pop up. Certain groups would have their babies were born with no feet or no legs, and just some crazy stuff. But generally speaking, they did pretty well. So I've just really enjoyed seeing the production angle of it and being able to selectively choose who goes in with what. And I think it's helped as a hognose breeder because I'm familiarizing myself with life cycles and with the process and with genetic mutations, if you will, that aren't detrimental and some that are, and trying to keep those detrimental ones from kind of popping back up. So yeah, I'm there.
Exactly. Yeah, especially the hairless. There's some funky stuff that pops up in the hairless. Of course, the hognoses love hairless.
They definitely do.
Yeah. So yeah, same on our end. It's been really neat to work with the mice. Kevin, we should do a whole another podcast on mice because we could probably host a whole podcast about them, huh?
Oh, I'd love it. Yeah, I'd learn a lot from you and hopefully have something to contribute too. So jumping into question number 3, what's your favorite hognose morph and why?
Oh, yes. This one's easy for us. We pretty much, Ariel and I spit this answer out at the same time the other day when you gave us the list of questions. Easy one, toffee. It's amazing. It's amazing on its own. It's beautiful. It can range. You can have a more yellow toffee. It can have green tones and pink tones. And then you can also go the extreme red route with all sorts of variations in between. And that's just toffee alone. I love it specifically in combination with Xanthic to make toxic. So toxic is my personal favorite.
Cool.
And as we had talked earlier, our first female being a het Mai Tai. So that's kind of where I think Ariel's interest is probably more in, I wouldn't say the albinos, but definitely the more red animals. And not, totally. I mean, she obviously really loves them all, but she loves the red toffees. I love the more yellow toffees. And I'm the same with albinos. I love the more yellow albinos. She loves the red stuff. So in that way, we kind of get to work with both because neither one of us is going to settle for one or the other. We're going to have both.
Yeah.
But I just love how versatile toffee is. I think it's really cool. Also, when we were talking earlier, about genetic mutations and things, toffee is another one where we see some interesting stuff pop up. And I haven't personally seen much negative. Mostly what I've seen is the paradoxing that comes with toffee, and I find that really interesting. And maybe one day we'll, with more studies and being able to actually get into their genetic sequencing, maybe we can figure out a little more as to what allele that's connected to, or if it's something that can be traced to something or another. Usually things like that, to my knowledge, are exactly that. They're a somatic mutation. They're just something strange that kind of pops up. It's just a fluke, not necessarily heritable, but it's very interesting to me that we see it a lot in certain lines and in certain morphs like toffee. Just something I've noticed. I'm sure we'll see it in more stuff in the future. But yeah, if I were going to, and in fact I have talked to, people that are new getting into hognoses, and they're asking, where do we go? What morphs? Toffee is definitely one of my first suggestions. Probably that and Arctic, just as good base morphs. Pretty much everybody knows what they are, and you can do so much with them. So that's what I like. I really like the genetics that don't really have like a dead end.
Yeah.
We can make lots of combos out of them. So that's what I personally like, and I think Ariel would very much agree with that too.
Yeah, that's interesting. I got a toffee belly years and years ago, and when they first came over from Germany, they had some really light colored ones that were almost like a kind of a peach on a white background. And I don't know what happened, if they're just obsolete. They called them lightning toffees, and that's really what RBE had. And I got one, and for whatever reason at that time, I've always been like a dark morph person. I love sables, Swiss chocolate, shadow, Xanthic. Those are kind of my forte. And then I like patterns too. And I wish I had hung on to that little toffee because he had zero paradoxing. He was one of the types that just pop up that don't have it.
Right.
but I have not seen a toffee belly in captivity that looked like that since I got rid of him. And last year, I got my first toffee since that time, so I went toffee-less for like 12 years. But I got an Arctic anaconda toffee from Adrian's Captive Herps up in Pennsylvania. And I love that dude, and he's big enough to breed now, and so I'm hoping one of my females he'll pair with her. I'm going for, like you guys had with the, I'm going for Arctic anaconda double het Mai Tai. So, yep.
That's it's so interesting to hear about. See what you do with that line. I'll be watching.
Yeah, I think it's going to be fun just to play with. I don't like toffees so much as a standalone, but I love seeing them in sable. Oh my goodness, they're beautiful.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's definitely one of Ariel's fortes, I guess you'd say, is sable. I think the moment she laid eyes on a sable, she was hooked and wanted, what can I do with sable? I want to figure out all the things about sable. So yeah, love sable, love the Swiss chocolate, and I'm excited to see what other people do with that. Of course, I'm excited to see what we can do with it, but yeah, part of the fun is also watching other people. So we're happy to see it over in the U.S. now, and I'm right there with you. I do really like some of the darker morphs. Of course, Storm Cloud being way up there at the top of my list, right alongside Toxic. Probably, I would put Storm Cloud as my next favorite combo. Amazing animals. So can't wait to actually produce some.
Heck yeah. So jumping into question number 4, do either one of you have any frustrations with the hognose hobby? It could be misinformation, the unavailability or inavailability of, information, products. Maybe it's community issues, social media, anything that you would consider a frustration. And piggybacking with that, if there is a frustration you've got with something, are there any steps that you've taken or plan to take to kind of rectify those as, a keeper or a breeder?
Yeah, absolutely. And Kevin, that's a great question. And it kind of opens the door for a couple of things. We've seen that with the white tree frogs as well. Education is probably the biggest one. If you go on and search same for hognoses as it is for white tree frogs, you go onto Google and you can just read pretty much, you can find anything that you want to find and go, okay, I'm going to stick with that article or, that company's advice and, it not be right. Same with the frogs. The white tree frogs are in a more arid species. So you go onto Google and it's going to say 80% humidity. And that's one way to kill your frog.
Okay. Wow.
So definitely education. Not that any one person is perfectly right. I think we all know that, can all agree to that, but we have to have the community come together and say, okay, these, or maybe there's a few ways, these are the ways that we are finding that hognoses do best. And that's going to come from communication, of course, and education. And it's, that's a big one. That's a big battle to fight, because where do you start? There are, I know hognoses aren't super popular in pet stores, but we are seeing them pop up in pet stores. From what I've seen in our area, the pet stores that we have that sell hognoses, they tend to give very good advice from what I've seen.
Good.
And of course, this is just a select few that I know of. But, the other thing is social media. How do we all come together and say, okay, this is the generally accepted guide, if you will, to hognoses? Because we all know there's a million ways to do it.
Yep.
I think like a lot of people, we brought our first hognose home. We wanted to give him space and, a decked out tank. And we got very lucky with our first one that he did well in that.
Good.
But we knew from talking to people that may not be the case. He could, do his own thing and want to be more secure. But we got very lucky with him. In fact, He's our first hognose. He's a toffee, and he's still living in that big tank very happily. We see him out every day. He's interactive. He's curious. We love it. However, in the snake room, we have our babies in racks. That seems to be, for us, what has worked well for babies. And I know the concept of racks can be really hard for people to wrap their head around and accept it as something that's okay for the snake. But it's all about education and teaching people that they don't have to live in a rack their whole life. They don't have to live in a 5-gallon tank their whole life. But it's going to depend on the individual animal.
Yep.
They're not all going to want to live in a 40-gallon like our cute little toffee boy. And we have experienced that. In fact, our first female, she was not keen on being in a glass tank at all. She wanted to not be able to see the outside world. They're also different. So they all have little different personalities. And I think it's important to know that going into purchasing a hognose and keeping them. And it can also be challenging for the educational aspect. It's like, well, this one might do okay. Or generally what we tell people is work your way up. So start like you would a baby crested gecko. You wouldn't want to lose a baby crested gecko in a huge tank. So you work your way up.
Yeah.
And that tends to be our general advice. And leading into your second question there, education. Education would be the way to rectify that. And what we're trying to do personally, trying to fight the little part of battle that we can with that, is mostly on social media, but we also, when we go to shows, we have a packet that we send home with everybody that is kind of your general do's and don'ts, where it really just highlights in red, don't do these things, don't use these products, make sure you're using, the right water and not trying to feed a frog. Things that some people think they should try if they get their hognose home and it doesn't eat for the first time.
Yeah.
I would say a lot of it revolves around eating, but that again ties right back into the enclosure. Your husbandry has to be right for that hognose to be comfortable. So we do that where we have essentially a care package that we send our babies with. It's got do's and don'ts, and then as well as trying to have an actual care guide. So far, we've gotten a White's tree frog care guide. I have piggybacking off a couple things here, but we've made QR codes for all of these things. So
Perfect.
At our shows, some people want to go paperless now. You can just whip out your phone at the show, and we'll have a board there that's got our QR codes listed for our morph market, our care sheets. We have a White's tree frog care group that we've created. I think there's plenty of well-run hognose groups out there, so we're leaving that to the pros. I don't think we need to dip our feet in that. Running one group is kind of enough right now.
Oh, yeah.
But it's been great to learn from those groups on social media and be able to kind of piggyback our care information and what we share with first-time owners and buyers by being in these groups that we have also learned from. So it's always a learning process. I think education is the biggest thing. With social media being so big now, too, it has its own frustrations. I could definitely get into that.
Oh, yeah.
Where we see, hognoses displaying behaviors and kind of allowed to display behaviors that, sometimes you just don't want to put that out as an image of a hognose.
Yeah.
They're not these little bitey machines all the time. That's not what they are. But on the flip side of that, you've got great influencers out there on social media showing what they truly are like, what they're like to handle. I think is another big thing that we get asked a lot, and we tend to be very careful, but we do like to bring an ambassador to our shows. Usually it's just us holding the snake, and then if somebody wants to purchase a snake, they can handle that specific snake. As you know, going around a reptile show and letting people hold all sorts of animals is not a good idea, but we typically bring a really good ambassador animal that we're just standing there with, usually holding him through almost, the entirety of the show, showing people that they are a lot like ball pythons in the sense that they will just hang out with you, and kind of sit there and be content in your presence. And we're very lucky to have several little ambassadors that we could bring if we want.
Cool.
We have some really good ones for that. So that's another part of education, just making it visible, whether that's social media or us bringing a snake to a show to show people they're not these little biting machines. They're not hissing all the time. In fact, one of our ambassadors, we've never heard him hiss. He's just the absolute sweetest. And, personality is something we are big on with our hognose breeding as well, as that is one thing we've noticed does get passed down to babies, and we really like the more docile sides. But we have our spicy group too. We like those just as much. So a little bit of visual education when we're at shows, and then definitely, whether that's sending people home with a paper or a QR code or some sort of link to a group that's really going to help them, and not just a Google file or whatever PetSmart's website says. I haven't even looked at a PetSmart website in forever, so I don't know what they've got on there. But I know they've got the pamphlets at the stores specifically for the white tree frogs, and boy, I just wish I could go in and shred those. But but yeah, definitely education is probably the biggest one. We're always trying to help people overcome fears. I think everybody is in the reptile community, whether you're working with arachnids and helping people get over arachnophobia by doing jumping spiders. They're very popular right now. But yeah, that's really what it's all about is education, and that's kind of where the frustration and the inspiration come from, I think.
Yeah, and so kind of going into that, obviously a lot of good information there and just beautiful nuggets. What, because you both have kind of, I know all of us that are breeders have had to white knuckle through, misinformation, things like that, and learn valuable lessons. So question number 5, what wisdom would you give yourself coming into this as a new keeper? If you could go back and say, man, I wish I had known that way back when, what would you have to say to the beginner, either keeper or breeder you?
Yeah, maybe my answer might be a little bit different than some others. Mine would be really to don't be shy. Branch out, network more. I think when Ariel and I got into this, we were a bit shy as to, being accepted into the community, taken seriously as a female-operated business.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish that, well, I love how we did it. If we did it again, I might do it the same way. But
awesome.
I do wish that maybe we were a bit more brave and bold, like our logo. Really stepping forward, being confident in ourselves, talking to more people, like I said, networking a bit more rather than kind of feeling the crowd out first.
Mm-hmm.
I really wish we just kind of stepped into the room and said, hey, here we are. But instead, we erred on the side of caution with that. So I guess that would probably be, if I were going to go back in time and change something, I would give myself confidence. Because through that confidence, being accepted into the community or just feeling confident, at a show, you feel confident to expand. And that would be my next advice to people, would be to go ahead and expand, or at least know what you're getting yourself into. I feel like we had a really good concept of what we were getting ourselves into. That maybe changed a little bit once we got into the white tree frogs. We needed a lot more room for those guys. They lay anywhere from 500 to over 1,000 eggs per spawn. That's a lot of baby frogs.
Yep.
But so probably going ahead and expanding a little bit sooner as far as like space goes. Go ahead, save up money for your racks, get ready for that, because the last thing you want is to think you're not going to have a clutch and then you do.
That's right. That's good.
Yeah, definitely expanding space and not worrying about being accepted into the community, because in my opinion, you will be. I mean, you'd really have to be doing something wrong, really, truly wrong, shady, however you want to say that, to kind of be disowned from the community. The reptile community is amazing. I could really go on about specifically the snake and maybe some lizard species communities, because those are the people that mean so much to us, have helped us, have been helpful with advice and guidance and mentorship, whereas the frogs, we were totally on our own. It has not been a welcoming community. It's been very hard. It's maybe knocked us down a peg or two, with confidence, because it's a really tough community. There's not many white tree frog breeders that are doing it on a productive scale, and there's really only one way to do it with white tree frogs, since they do produce so much. You can't do it on a small scale.
Right.
It's really not something you can do on a hobbyist level. So it's been a journey with the tree frogs and being accepted into that community, and it's made us that much more thankful for the hognose community specifically, but also all the other reptile people. It's been great, and we've gained a lot of confidence that we maybe didn't start with, but that we have now from just making great friends and listening to people. And, I think it's important to show people how much you respect them and respect what they do. You're not here to be competition. We got that a lot with the tree frogs when we started into that. It was like we were competition to everybody. In our minds, we're not competing with anybody. We want you to be successful too.
Yeah.
So, it's been a really interesting to see both groups of those. And that you could branch off into how dog breeders and cat breeders and all those communities are similar in that way, where you can kind of come into the community and feel a little bit left out, or like you're being looked at as competition or lesser than, or whatever it may be. But to overcome that and get through that, you got to do it by talking to people and networking and making friends. And so that's how we have gained that confidence we maybe didn't quite start out with a whole lot of.
Well, that's cool. I breed tiger salamanders, and it hasn't been an easy process. And man, that community is so tough. I don't know if it's an amphibian thing, but it's like any reptile community is pretty welcoming, and it doesn't matter your background or your belief or ethnicity, but for whatever reason, the salamander community, man, they are tough.
Yes, I think it's an amphibian thing. I think there's a lot of ways to keep them and different ways to do it. And then depending on the species, whether it's something that you can do on a hobbyist level or not, makes a difference as well. But yeah, it's really interesting to see the difference in the communities, and we definitely gravitate towards reptile shows, exotic pet shows. We have not done like an invertebrate or an amphibian specific show or anything like that. And unfortunately, we tend to kind of stay in our own lane a bit with the frogs for that reason.
Yeah.
But same thing, you still have to network to a certain degree. So
True.
It's just been harder to find the right people to network with in the amphibian community versus the reptile community. I feel like we could walk into any show and go up to any reptile breeder, and they're going to smile at us, and we're going to get to talking about something fun. Not always the case with frogs. Even if we breed a totally separate species, and we're talking to somebody that just breeds duck frogs, there's just always some sort of, not always, I shouldn't say that, there just seems to be sometimes some tension in the air for seemingly no reason. But, that's kind of the nature of the beast, too. I think as you get more well-known, you're going to have people that, disagree with you, don't like you for whatever reason, don't want to see you succeed. And you just have to stick to, true to yourself and push through that. Be part of the community. Make yourself part of the community, if nothing else. Just push your way through the crowd and get in there. Because if you're doing it, you are part of the community. And contributing to the community helps with that too. I think once you get your name out there, you can help provide some helpful information. You help a owner or two, and before you know it, people are going to know you as somebody that's helpful and informative. And so yeah, that's a big part of it is definitely the community and not being shy, in my opinion.
Well, I want to just say thanks so much for coming on the podcast. Information's been fantastic. And just so everybody listening knows, I'm going to have their information. This is Ariel and Lindsay, and they run Sterling Exotics. I'm going to have their information below in the description, so make sure to give them a follow, give them a like, check out their media that they're putting out. I was just fascinated. I worked at a natural history museum, and we had whites and dumpies, and we loved them. And we did keep them kind of dry, which was cool because one of the girls said that, and I thought, no, surely they're rainforest. But she was like, no, you can keep them in. I remember they had the one we had in one of those round herp habitats, and I thought that gets too dry, too much airflow, but it did great and lived forever. So saying all that to say, I want everybody to check out what they got going on. I really respect these two ladies for what they contribute. I've never told them that, but that's the reason you're on the show. You guys are totally incredible. And I had the cool chance to meet them at Daytona Reptile Show back in 22. And we just made pretty much instant friends. And of course, Ariel and I were, we were friends on all the groups and would communicate back and forth for years. And got to know you, Lindsay. And so, you guys are amazing. Thanks for all you do. And thanks for coming on the show.
Oh, thank you, Kevin. You already know we think the world of you, love your books and everything you've done for the community. Absolutely a role model for us. And really appreciate you bringing us on and giving us a little highlight. Kind of a introduction into the YouTube social media world for us. So this has been great, and I can't wait to hear the other people that you interview too, because that's what it's all about, is learning and talking to different people. So I'm really excited for your podcast coming up and what you do with all this in the future. We're really looking forward to that, and thank you so much for letting us be part of it.
You betcha. Thanks for being on the show. Great hearing from Sterling Exotics. Unfortunately, Ariel had some prearranged business she had to tend to, so was unable to make it with us. Hopefully, we can catch her on a different time. If you have not purchased a copy or any of the copies of the 5 hognose book titles that I've got, I have worked with Shovelnose Hogs. That's Jermaine Guy. If you know him already, he's got a great platform on YouTube and some social media, other platforms, Instagram, Facebook, things like that. If you're looking for a deeper discount code, it's the deepest code we've ever offered. Jermaine has that on his channel. Look for his recent vids, starting about 6:15, I believe. He's got a promo code on there that's the deepest discount code we've ever offered, so make sure to check that out. Jermaine was one of my strongest and staunchest supporters early on, even without ever having met me. So he was always promoting my books. I just was honored by the fact that without anything, he just was willing to and wanting to get the information out into the hands of the public and those that are interested in hognose. So that's the reason for our agreement, and I wanted him to be the point person for that. So again, check out Shovelnose Hogs on YouTube for some great content and good book discount. As far as availability goes right now, we're running kind of low, but we are building up, getting a lot of animals fed and going. Got some nice Project Red stuff coming up. Project Redhead, which is a spin-off of the Project Red, and some of those should be hitting Morph Market pretty soon here. I do have some shadow triple het permafrost, possible het axanthics. I've got males and females of those. We were encouraged by another breeder to really push a real high price on those, and we didn't have a lot of good feedback from everybody because the prices were kind of astronomical. So we're going to adjust those a little bit, something a little more fairly, and make sure to get that out. Just so you're aware, the sire of that clutch was a yearling male that just absolutely took off. You've heard me say it before. Anytime I have multi-het or multi-visuals, they just seem to do the best. They grow the biggest. They breed the best. They'll breed multiple females. I don't know what it is. Maybe just the really, really strong genetics going on. But long story short, he's the one that I originally thought was an axanthic permafrost. But after a little bit of research, we've determined that he is a shadow permafrost. He does have het axanthic in his bloodline, so there's low percentage chance of those. But if you saw that guy I called blue permafrost, he is the father of those babies that I'm going to be having for sale on Morph Market. They're down right now, but we're going to let them get some size on them and then throw them back up. If anybody's interested in that project, just hit me up on it, and we've got some good pricing on that particular project. We only have 3 more podcasts to do before we wrap up the end of the season, so it's coming to a close quick. That's it for us today, guys. Thanks for tuning in to the Hognose One podcast. Catch you on the flip side.